Okay, what we're due today is a very common question.
Very common.
By the way, if anybody has suggestions for topics, I'm open to hear, because every time I try to think of something which will both be interesting, practical, and also have some general knowledge, which is good to have. So this is actually a good topic, because cruise ships on Shabbos is something that apparently Jews like a lot. As Jews like anything that involves food. So a lot of people go on cruises and they have all kinds of questions. It's also an interesting topic, and also this sugya, which there are a lot of sources on. Also, there are some concepts here which are important generally in regards to Hilchot Shabbat. So that's why it's a very good topic. Okay. So what do we have about sailing on Shabbat? So the Gemara says, the Gemara says in Shabbat Daf Yutet, very short Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, אין מפליגין בספינה פחות משלושה ימים קודם לשבת. במה דברים אמורים? לדבר הרשות, אבל לדבר מצווה שפיר דמי. In other words, you're not allowed to sail on a boat less than 3 days before Shabbat. Here there's a big argument how to count this. I think the general understanding is that it means from Wednesday on it's a problem, but there's another opinion which says that you can count Shabbat amongst one of the 3 days, so therefore it's only from Thursday on that there's a problem. Then the Braita says, "B'men dvarim omrim ledvar reshut." It's only if you're sailing for the purpose of a dvar reshut. But ledvar mitzvah, if you're sailing for the purpose of a mitzvah, shapir dami. It's okay to sail even within less than 3 days from Shabbat. Okay, uposek imo al menat lishbot ve'ino shobet. Divrei Rebbe. In other words, according to Rebbe, you have to make the deal with the sailor, who apparently is not Jewish, that on Shabbos he will stop the boat, but eino shovet, and then afterwards he doesn't have to stop. In other words, it's exactly. Bechatchila, you don't want to make it as if you told him to sail the boat on Shabbat, so you come to an agreement with him with a wink of the eye that he'll stop on Shabbat, and then he doesn't stop.
What would be the purpose of this?
What?
What would be the purpose of such a thing? There's so many times.
Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer Eino Tzarich. You don't have to do it. Umitzor letzidon, which I doubt anybody here has been there. Has anybody there been? Well-known cities on the Lebanese coast. Okay, Sidon and Tyre and Sidon.
Beirut.
You've been to Beirut. Very nice.
It's a long story.
Okay.
I was there for an hour in a plane.
You just got
on the runway in the middle of a civil war. Long story.
Anyway, so these are nice places on Lebanon. If things weren't so crazy there, everybody would love to go there. So these are two pretty close places along the coast. Afilu be'erev Shabbat mutar. Why? Because if nothing goes wrong, you should be able to arrive before Shabbos enters.
Is this for reshut or is this for mitzvah?
No, Mitzvah Letzidon, it's no limitation, because again, the whole problem is if you're taking on a trip which will carry on into Shabbat. But if you're going a short distance, in other words, you will arrive at your destination before Shabbat, not a problem. So that's what Mitzvah Letzidon, no limitations at all, because you'll arrive there before Shabbat is over. But if you're taking a longer distance, which you'll end up having to be on the boat on Shabbat, that's where the whole thing about the 3 days comes into play.
And what do we understand reshut be? Is it a business trip or is that?
Yeah, the Ramah is very lenient on reshut. He says that reshut is only if you are going solely for pleasure, but he says if it's for business, even business is considered a dvar mitzvah. What?
How's that?
Because you need to have parnasa somehow. You're not going stam.
So it's a mitzvah to be refined my family.
Of course it is. That's for sure.
So then if I'm in the middle of work, it should be part from davening.
You are.
Yeah. No, that's only me time not stealing from my employer. That's not me time being.
Listen. As you know, mitzvah in Chazal has many different meanings. Sometimes Chazal can mean mitzvah. They can mean a mitzvah doraita. Sometimes mitzvah can be a mitzvah derabanan, and the mitzvah also times in the language of Chazal can be just a good act, a good deed. Okay, mitzvah is a very, very wide, very broad term. So here in this case, he interprets it leniently. That doesn't mean that regarding the halacha va'osek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah.
I mean, surely one word should have the same meaning always.
That's not true. A lot of words have different meanings. So mitzvah, for example, is a good word that has.
I think in a halachic context, you would think one word is going to have a consistent meaning. Shabbat doesn't ever refer to Friday. It's the Shabbat. Doesn't it?
Mimacharat Shabbat. What does it refer to?
Rabbi.
Okay.
But still on this, it's.
By the way, I saw a Karaite app for Sfira Omer. Yeah, with the Karaite Chazan singing the Omer.
Really?
Yeah. It's great stuff. Yeah.
Do they still
What?
exist?
I don't know. Something. So I saw somebody sent a link for it. The Karaite. Look for Karaite Sfira Omer. I have no idea.
They started counting too.
Very little Karaites left. There's a community, I think, in Rehovot, maybe. No, there are a few places. Yeah, there are a few Karaite shuls. I knew somebody in university who was a regular Orthodox Jew, but he researched Karaite Judaism. So a lot of times they would ask him halachic questions because there are very few.
He's like the Rav Rashi.
No, he doesn't hold. He's a regular. He's a frum guy, but he knows about Karaites. Yeah.
But here.
I found it. Karaite Omer counter.
Make sure you don't,
America.
make sure it doesn't confuse you.
He's confused already. I'm sorry to press this point, but the Sidon and Surah Sidon.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying because he's going to disembark after Shabbat finishes?
No, he not disembark. He's going to arrive at his destination before Shabbat. Let's say he leaves Friday morning.
Yeah.
He will get in time
Before Shabbat.
before Shabbat. In other words, what the Gemara is saying, that the whole discussion is, when we said En mafligin v'sina pachal mishlosha yamim kodem Shabbat, is where you won't arrive at your destination before Shabbat. You'll have to continue sailing on Shabbat.
What is destination?
Of course.
Alexandria, or is it?
Of course. So if you're on your way to Spain from Eretz Israel, even if you leave on Sunday, I'm not sure you'll arrive in
It
time.
doesn't say where this destination is. Maybe they.
No, that's what I'm saying. Mitzvot tzidon afilu berev Shabbat mutar. From that we learn out that any time you will arrive at your destination, you should arrive at your destination before Shabbat, even though there is a possibility that things could go wrong at sea. But anytime, based on normal circumstances, you will arrive at your destination before Shabbat, there's no limitation as to when you can set sail. Yeah.
Well, there's a problem with this mitzvah on 3 days. If I understand that I would have a sea journey of an entire week, then I could understand that any dvar mitzvah should be good. But in the case, if we have something, we can arrive at 4 days, and it's just a mitzvah to be at the bar mitzvah of the nebuch of your uncle. Then
The bar mitzvah of your uncle. Wow.
no, the uncle's boy. Yeah. So whatever. Then you could argue that no, he has to go early. It's not a mitzvah. So then the case of a short travel with a ship over Shabbos would be just in the case of, let's say, Shluche Mitzvot, Shluche Yerech HaChodesh, or something like this, where you are going through Shabbos because because it's urgent that you arrive there. You understand what I ask?
I didn't follow that at all, especially the Shluchei Rosh Chodesh. Oh, you mean they're traveling? They saw it in the north, and they're trying to go on the cow.
Something. They can travel. They can travel through Shabbos, don't they? Anyway.
Yeah.
They can travel on horseback through Shabbat.
Yeah, they can travel. You can be Mechal Shabbat for Kiddush HaChodesh, but how?
So it should be
somewhere I lost the question.
No, it should be just this sort of mitzvah should be called a mitzvah to give you a heter.
Okay, listen, we're jumping that Dvar mitzvah. The Rama ruled whatever he ruled. I have no. That's not what I want to get into at all. There's a more basic problem with this Gemara. The Gemara doesn't say why. Why am I not allowed to set sail on a boat within 3 days to Shabbat? What's the problem? And if it is such a problem, how is the fact that I'm sailing for a Dvar mitzvah, whatever it is the Dvar mitzvah is, whether it's your uncle's bar mitzvah, or some business investment, or to search for some long lost treasures. How does that supersede if there's an issue of Shabbat here? Okay, that's a big problem in the Gemara, and because the Gemara doesn't explain it all, this is all that the Gemara says on this topic, doesn't explain it all what the problem is of sailing within 3 days to Shabbat. There'll be many, many opinions in the Rishonim on this topic. Very creative opinions. Okay. So let's see. First opinion that we have, the Rif quotes it, it's Rabbeinu Chananel. Okay? Yesh mi she'omer. What we're going to do is very simple. We're going to see all the opinions of the Rishonim, and then we're going to try to apply them to cruise ships. Okay. יש מי שאומר, הדתניא אין מפליגין בספינה פחות מג' ימים קודם השבת, בזמן שהספינה גוששת ואין במים 10 טפחים, ומשום גזירת תחומין גזרו בה. אבל למעלה מי' טפחים לא גזרו, ומשום הכי נהגו העם להפליג בים הגדול. Okay, this is an important point, that all the Rishonim bring up that there was a minhag to set sail very close to Shabbat. In some places they would even set sail on Shabbat by Jews. So they all tried to figure out a way to explain the Gemara and also resolve the minhag. So Rabbeinu Chananel has this very innovative approach. He says as follows: what's the whole problem with setting sail in the boat? That you're going outside the tchum, right? Because we know on Shabbat, according to most opinions, it's only Nisr Derabanan, but you're not allowed to leave the tchum, which is about 2,000 amma outside the city. Okay, the Rambam has a unique shita that even though the 2,000 amas Derabanan, there is what we call Yud Bet Mil, which is Doraita. Okay, not everybody agrees with that. But generally everybody agrees, Doraita, Derabanan, there is an Isser to go outside the Tchum. Now if you're sailing with a boat, most likely you're going to go outside the Tchum. But the Gemara in the Eruvin discusses whether there's an Isser Tchumin if you're traveling above 10 Tfachim. Okay? Why? Because we know that regarding certain halachos, like Reshut Rabim goes from the ground only up to the height of 10 Tfachim. Okay? And therefore, if I'm somebody able to walk 10 Tfachim above the ground, the Gemara in Eruvin raises a suffix whether that's considered that I'm Yotze Michutz L'Tchum. Okay? Now, what is the psak on that suffix? So the Rishonim came up with a clever psak on that topic. They said as follows. This is most Rishonim hold, and this is, if I remember correctly, Bobi Paskin. If you're traveling above 10 Tfachim, but over the ground, we're Machmir, and that's also. In other words, if somehow you have these poles that you're able to jump to from pole to pole above 10 Tfachim. No, a roof I think is considered like the ground, but you have to have.
You have to have lots of little makom tours that you are walking.
Yeah, it's a little complicated to do. It's not very practical.
If you take the bus, take the second.
If you have a bus, maybe. I just saw this.
Why a bus is like a house?
No. If you have a bus, I just saw this sort of bus, this new bus that they invented, which rides above cars. All right, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for now. We'll be looking up another.
What if you're on like an elevated train?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure that counts. Like, once you have 4x4, I think that might be considered like karka. But whatever, that's not important.
Cable car.
A cable car. Okay.
Yeah, the question is also whether you measure from where the person is or whether you're measuring from what the person is standing on. It's a tricky topic. Anyway, it doesn't matter because la halacha we're machmer that even above 10 tefachim there is an isser. But by sea, if you're traveling by sea, there we are lenient. Why? What's the difference? Because the sea is anyway a makom. In other words, there is a connection between the Isser Tchumin and Isser Hotzah. Okay? Just like you're not allowed to carry things, move them from place to place, also you're not allowed to move yourself from place to place, which is considered beyond the Tchum in that regard. Right. But the sea, which is not makom hiluch shel bnei adam, the anyway there, the Isser is even more lenient, and that's why by above 10 tfachim in the sea, there's no Isser Tchumin. Okay? So provided you're above 10 tfachim from, what do you call it, the seabed? Is that what you call the seafloor? What do you call the
seabed?
The seabed?
The water doesn't count as a car.
No, the water doesn't count. So as long as you're 10 tfachim above the seabed, again, there's a question whether you measure from where the person is or whether you measure from the bottom of the boat.
Is it usher to row a boat on Shabbat?
What?
Is it usher to row a boat on Shabbat?
Is it asur just to row the boat?
I'm rowing a boat. I have a giant lake in my backyard. I'm rowing my boat around the lake. Is there an issue there?
Well, look, there is an isur to swim on Shabbat.
That's Mishum.
No, but that's because
You might make an oar.
make an oar.
But so I don't know regarding rowing. But
And
here
my point
the assumption is
how could they set sail on Shabbat? Because in order to set sail on Shabbat, you have to have the boat at least in water which is 10 tefachim high or more. Meaning the boat's going to be out there. You have to get from the shore to the boat on Shabbat.
yeah. But again, okay, that's a good question. The question is who's running the boat? Are you just traveling on the boat or you're also rowing the boat? So if the assumption is, we'll see that most of the Rishonim assume that the case here you're not doing anything. There's some non-Jew running the boat.
Now, how are you getting from the shore to the boat?
What?
If you tell me that the minhag was to set sail on Shabbat.
No, the minhag was to set sail. There were some places that even set sail on Shabbat, but they would go, or some places. Let's not get into all those details. They would get on the boat. The boat was anchored.
Yeah.
What's the problem to get on the boat? And then they set sail.
Because the boat's far away. The boat's in water, which is more than 10 tefachim high. So they have to get the boat.
The boat is at port. You get on the boat. What's the
Is the
problem?
water 10 tefachim high in port?
Doesn't matter. When you're going outside the tchum, that's when you have to be above 10 tefachim.
Oh, so you can travel a bit from the port, and that's still within the tchum.
Yeah.
By the time you get outside the tchum, there's
Usually,
no tchum
also in most ports, the especially big boats, they're not going to be within 10 tefachim of the.
Right.
But Rabbi, can you descend from the boat then?
Okay. We'll get to what we won't know. You have in the tshuva at the end a lot of details.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah.
All right. So according to Rabbeinu Hananel, the whole isser that the Gemara is talking about is only in a sfina gosheshet. In other words, where you're traveling on a boat which is very close to the seabed, within 10 tefachim of the seabed. For example, where do you have such a situation?
Submarine.
What? A submarine. Okay. I don't think.
No.
I doubt it. But that's a clever option. I don't think Rabbeinu Hananel was referring to that. Is it a nuclear submarine? What kind of submarine
If
do
you're
you
a
have?
sailor in the army.
I doubt the submarines get even that close to the seabed, but maybe.
Shallow water, obviously.
Yeah, shallow water. If, for example, you go rafting in the Jordan River, what they mechuna rafting. I don't know if you can really call it rafting.
What's mechuna?
What? It's like rafting. Israelis call it rafting. I don't think it's real rafting. Aren't too many white waters.
It's not really Colorado, is it?
No, not at all, not at all. So there, if you'll jump out from the kayak into the water, which is what most Israelis do, then you'll see that it's less than.
Your ankles.
In that way.
Your ankles will be just above the water. There's no water in the
Yeah, very little water. So that's a sfina gosheshet. So if, for example, you want to visit, you live uphill on the upstream on the Jordan River, you want to go visit your friend at one of the, you're in Beit Hillel and you want to go down to Kfar Blum or one of these places, so you want to get up on some sort of boat and go down. So according to Rabbeinu Hananel, that's where the Gemara discusses the 3 days and not 3 days, because that's less than 10 tefachim. So that there you'll be over the Isser Tchum.
Why? If they're close enough together.
If they're close enough, fine. But if they're farther, then if they're outside the Tchum,
sailing really.
no, the Isser is going out. Even if you're getting on a
Shabbat.
boat,
Fine.
even before Shabbat, if you'll end up sailing below 10 tefachim, going outside the Tchum on Shabbat, that's the Isser. Okay. But setting sail at sea, no problem at all. According to Rabbeinu Hananel, you can even set sail on Erev Shabbos, even if it's Lidvar Reshus, as long as you're sailing above 10 tefachim.
Can you set on Shabbos too?
Okay, that's a good question. He doesn't address that. He just addresses the Gemara of setting sail before Shabbos.
According to him, you should be able to do, because at the moment you go out.
Could be that according to Rabbeinu Hananel, you might be able to set sail on Shabbat itself, provided that you're staying above 10 tefachim. Okay, so the Rif rejects this opinion. He says, you should have said only a little boat. Tani sfina stam demashma ben ktana ben gdola. V'od ma'ir yagim yamim afilu tfei nami. In other words, according to Rabbeinu Hananel, you're going outside the Tchum on Shabbat, then how does setting sail before Wednesday solve that problem? You're still ultimately, when Shabbat comes, if you're still on that boat in the shallow waters, you're still traveling outside the Tchum. So how does setting sail 3 days before, how does that solve the problem? And how is the fact that I'm going to a mitzvah, how does that permit for me to go outside the Tchum? Okay? Alright, so he completely rejects the opinion of Rabbeinu Hananel. What does he come up with? Ela, says the Rif, I'm skipping to where I underlined. אלא היינו תימא דאין מפליגין בספינה פחות מגימל ימים קודם השבת, משום ביטול מצוות עונג שבת. דכל גימל ימים הביא להו שינוי וסת. משום נענוע הספינה, כי דכתיב בו יחוגו וינועו כשיכור וגומר, ולא יכלי למעבד עונג שבת, ולאחר 3 ימים הביא להו נייחה. ובא ימך לה ומקיימה מצוות עונג שבת, והיינו תימא דלמדבר מצווה שרי, משום דתירה ממצוות עונג דאמר מר העוסק במצווה, patur mina mitzvah. In other words, according to the Rif, the whole problem is seasickness. Okay? It takes you 3 days to get used to the sea. So therefore, if I set sail within 3 days of Shabbat, I might be seasick on Shabbat. I won't be able to eat my children properly. I'll throw everything up. Okay? So,
Sensible.
what?
It's true.
One second, Mashma, if I'm a sailor.
If I'm a sailor and I'm used to the sea, I have no problem at all, according to the Rif.
Yeah.
Okay? But now, according to the Rif, now we understand everything. Why 3 days before it's fine? Because then by Shabbat, I'll be used to the sea. And also we understand why Lidvar Mitzvah, it's mutter. Because again, the whole issue is that I'll be able to fulfill the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbat. But if I'm sailing for the purpose of a mitzvah, Osek v'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah, so we can forfeit the mitzvah of Shabbat. As this is in opposition to Rabbeinu Hananel. Because according to Rabbeinu Hananel, I'm over an Isser of Tchumen. So that's a real problem.
The 3-day rule is maybe yes and maybe no. Maybe that you're on the boat for 3 days and you go sail on a Sunday, and on the Shabbat you will go into a storm and your boat's going, 70 degrees. You're going to be seasick anyway. There's not going to be much on it.
Yeah, but then you are honest.
Okay, what can we do? I mean, what happens if you catch the flu before Shabbat? There's no end to what can happen. But for most people, Chazal went by most people that it takes them 3 days they estimated that most people it takes 3 days to get used to sea. You're right, that maybe on Shabbat itself a storm will break out and you'll be tossed from side to side. And the children will be out of there anyway, but...
So you're not allowed, even if you don't get seasick.
Yeah, but it's not likely. I'll tell you why. Because, for example, I didn't bring it here, but there's a tshuva of the Rambam that says, based on this, that the only isser is if you're traveling in the sea. But if you're traveling in a calm river, where there is no seasickness, it's mutter to set sail.
Oh.
Provided that you're above 10 tfachim. Because the Rif agrees that below 10 tfachim you can't sail. The Rif and the Rambam, they all agree that below 10 tfachim...
everybody agrees like that. So.
Below 10 tfachim it's asr. Rabbeinu Hananel is actually a kula. Because he at least permits you to sail below 10 tfachim if it's 3 days before or for the purpose of a mitzvah.
Right.
They're saying below 10 tfachim it's asr because you're going outside the tchum. But above 10 tfachim, you only have the seasickness. If you can solve the seasickness, no reason to prohibit.
Right.
Does anybody bring an idea of sakana that should one put oneself in?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's the Baal Amor. That's very, very important. We'll get to that soon.
Must be a few.
Okay?
Yes. Don't listen.
Why should second have an issue?
It can't.
What?
You're not meant to put yourself in second on Shabbat, are you?
Oh, we'll get to it. We'll see.
No.
By the way, there's another halacha in this Gemara, which also the Gemara doesn't explain, that you're not allowed to set siege in a Melchemet Reshut. You're not allowed to set siege to a city within 3 days to Shabbat. So the Rif explains it also the same way, because the first 3 days of siege, everybody's panicking, they're frightened. If you've already been 3 days there, then you're calm. No, if you ask the people who've been in battle, they'll tell you. War becomes very dull after a few days.
And do the laws of cruise ships on Shabbat also apply to flights? If you're on, say, a 48-hour flight.
Were you going to the moon?
No, a 24-hour flight.
Yeah, there is such a case. If you're flying, there is a way to skip Shabbat. If you're flying from Japan to the States, there's like a flight there from Japan to New York or something like that. That theoretically you could take off before Shabbat and land after Shabbat.
There's a book. There on Shabbat.
No, you can take off after Shabbat
Yeah.
and land before Shabbat. No.
That you can't do. That's us asking too much.
48 hours is a bit exaggerated.
I think you
But
could skip
can take
Shabbat.
24
I don't
hours.
remember.
Well,
There,
be in the air over Shabbat.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody wrote. There's a sefer called Ratz Katzvi, a lot of volumes. So in his volume on Shabbat, he discusses that case.
And what's the din?
Well, look, again, according to the rules that we said, if as long as you're traveling above water, you're fine.
Okay, but you
Okay.
have to keep Shabbat on the plane.
Fine. The plane is going off anyway. Non-Jews are running it.
Yeah.
I'm getting on the plane before Shabbat, landing after Shabbat. On Shabbat itself, I'm not doing anything.
What zmanim do I keep? How do I make hadara? How do I make kiddush? When?
You bring
where?
yourself some. You buy on the plane some
Duty-free.
kosher wine in the
Okay.
duty free
Yeah.
before Shabbat,
Yeah.
or at the duty free at the airport before,
Yeah.
and you have a cup with you and you make kiddush. What's the problem? Lighting
But
candles.
how do I-
So use
what
the
am I
electric
zmanim?
electric lights on your.
What am I zmanim?
Zmanim, anyway, you have a problem. When you fly on a weekday, you don't have a problem with Zmanim. It's anyway a problem. The only question is, this is to me is not clear because there are parts of the flight which are going above ground. And above ground, there is an Isser of Tchumen, even if you're above 10 Tfachim, what I mentioned earlier. Unless you claim
You're so far above.
you're so far above 10 Tfachim that that's not considered an Isser of Tchumen.
Makam shelo gozer avanan.
Yeah, they only goes there up to the clouds. But if you're above the clouds, then
Let's figure out.
Let's hope you've
But
got
he has an
lower
interesting
high cloud cover.
discussion on it. It's hard to say on that. I don't know what to tell you on that case. Okay, but definitely according to at least in terms of the Oneg Shabbat, that would not be a problem. Okay, especially if you're flying business class. I don't know, maybe
Oh.
if you're in economy, you might be in some trouble. Okay. But getting back to here, so that's the Shita of the Rif, and that's also the Shita of the Rambam. I just mentioned they connected also to the Isser to set siege.
Well, 1 second. There's no din of Shabbat being 24 hours? 25 hours, I mean?
What?
There's no din of Shabbat being a 25-hour time period?
No, Shabbat is from sunrise till sunset on Friday till Tzeit HaKochavim.
However short or long that may be.
Yeah, I mean if you're time traveling or whatever, I don't know. You might.
Well, so according to what you're saying, then, if I don't have a sunset or a sunrise, I
Well,
don't
look, the
keep
Gemara
Shabbat.
says, "Yehi chelkimi machnisei Shabbat betvelio motzei Shabbat betzipor." Right, so we see that you can extend Shabbat.
Yeah.
So by the same token, it might not be
What if I live in Alaska? Above the
a
Arctic
recommended thing to do. But if you can shorten Shabbat, that
Circle.
might
If I
also
live
be a
above the
problem.
Arctic Circle, and there's no
You go to the
sunset.
nearest-
Okay, that's a
You go
famous
to the
problem.
nearest
That's
place
a
that
famous
keeps
problem. But
Shabbat
even there, I think anyway, that there is a big discussion on there. There's one person says, I think there is an opinion that says that there's no Shabbos there.
Sam, what if you
But
orbit in the
but even if
space
you're,
craft?
yeah,
I
no,
can answer this. I've done
that Rav Kasher wrote a book on Ha'adam al Hayarech, how to keep mitzvot in space. But even if you're in the Arctic
No
Circle,
problem.
even if you're in the Arctic Circle,
Yeah.
you still have 24-hour cycles. They're all day or they're all night, but you still
But
have
you just
24
told
hours.
me it's not a din in 25 hours, it's a din in sunrise and sunset.
I meant in the sense of a cycle of the
Then it is a 25
a
hours.
cycle of the Earth, the rotation of the Earth. Yeah, but you've moved from place to place.
So,
You started out Shabbat in one place, you ended up Shabbat in another place.
Yeah, you can. There is even a Trias Hametim. There was this famous guy. He was a Batchen at the Chazer in Europe, and he was also a member of the Chevre Kadisha, and he heard about the maze in America. So he took a Concorde, and the Concorde was so fast that he arrived even before the Ptiret of the maze.
No, there is somebody. I was told about somebody who wanted to have a full day's work on Friday because he said Friday is a short day. He doesn't have a full day of work, so every Friday he would take the Concorde from England to the States to have a full work day on Friday. What?
Who's English?
I don't know who it was.
They
But now they don't have the Concorde anymore, so that's it, right? But there used to be a flight from London to New York with
Yeah,
Concorde.
yeah.
Oh yeah? All right, very good.
Yeah.
Anyway, because only with the Concorde can you make it on time, I think.
It was a 4-hour flight from London
Yeah.
to New York was 4 hours.
That doesn't make any sense.
And the time
It's only
difference
6,
and the
not-
time difference is 5 hours,
Down
right?
2 hours, yeah.
The time difference is 5 hours, right?
Yes.
4 hours, 1.5 hours under New York.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's so
That's
fast.
too short.
Anyway,
Too long, I mean. It
No,
should be shorter than that.
they couldn't cut down. It's a 6-7 hour flight. So they cut it down almost in half.
okay. Let's see the other opinions here. Now Tosfot brings two opinions. First opinion is of the Rashbam. Tosfot says, פסק רשב"ם, למותר להיכנס בספינה מבעוד יום בערב שבת, אפילו שהספינה הולכת חוץ לתחום בשבת, וספינה ממילא אז להביאו לו אביד מידי. Okay, so first of all, the Rashbam addresses the issue of Tchumen. He says Tchumen is not a problem at all in the boat. Why? Because you're not walking anywhere. You're standing still. It's the boat that's moving. So that's not an Isser Tchumen. It's Isser Tchumen only if you're moving. But if you're still and the boat is moving, there's no Isser Tchumen. ובלבד שלא יצא חוץ לספינה, as long as you're not exiting the boat. והספינה כולה כ4 אמות, the entire boat is like 4 אמות that you can walk within. והדתניא סוף פרק כמה דשבת אין מפליגים בספינה פחות מ3 ימים, עתיה כבית שמאי, דלא שרו לעשות מלאכה בערב שבת, אלא בכדי שיעשו מבעוד יום. אבל לבית הלל דשרו עם השמש, אף על פי שהמלאכה נעשית בשבת, שרי להיכנס. Okay, in other words, we have a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Am I allowed to start a malacha before Shabbat, which will continue occurring in Shabbat itself? Okay? According to Beit Shammai, you're not allowed to. So, for example,
Drying your clothes in a dryer.
yeah, okay, that might be a good modern example. If you operate a machine, which you hit the on button before Shabbat and will continue working in Shabbat itself, according to Beit Shammai, that's Asr. And according to Beit Hillel, it's mutter. So according to Beit Shammai, according to the Gemara said that you shouldn't set sail before Shabbat, 3 days before Shabbat. It was only talking Beit Shammai because you're starting the movement of the boat before Shabbat and causing it to continue to move on Shabbat.
But we said the moving we didn't put into consideration so far as a problem.
Okay,
You don't
it's
move
not.
the boat,
It's
that's
not.
the guy who walks
It's
the boat.
okay, but even that Beit Shammai say that's usher. Even if a goy does for you, like for example, Beit Shammai say you can't give it to a goy if he
Shortly
doesn't have
before
time to
Shabbat.
shortly before Shabbat, if he doesn't have time to complete it.
But you don't tell
It's
him
not-
to complete it on Shabbos, so that's the heter why you have to tell him.
That's
that
according to
he's
Beit Hillel, not according to Beit Shammai.
No,
According to Beit Hillel, you're allowed, provided that you don't force him to work on Shabbat. But according to Beit Shammai, even if I didn't tell him to do it on Shabbat,
okay.
if he doesn't have enough time to complete it before Shabbat, it's asr. He has to have enough time to complete it before Shabbat.
Okay.
It's not. To me, it's not really clear what melacha he's talking about, but that's what he's saying. Anyway, bottom line, according to Rashbam, this whole Gemara is not la'alacha, because it's only according to Beit Shammai and according to Beit Hillel,
No problem.
no problem at all at setting sail. It's very
Because
lenient
according to
opinion.
Hillel, you can benefit from malacha that was done before Shabbat and Shabbat.
Right, provided you're not doing anything on Shabbat itself, whatever's going on is
Like, can you
fine.
benefit from the totzot of that malacha? You can do, right?
You can benefit, right? Unless it's a goy that does specifically something for you, but that's a.
So what
That's very
exactly mean when you said posting in what Amana lishpot? What was the lishpot? That the captain would drop the sails? Or-
That's according to Beit Shammai if you're setting sail more than 3 days before Shabbat. In other words, if you're setting sail more than 3 days before Shabbat, then Shabbat is far away and it doesn't appear as if you're causing a malacha to occur on Shabbat.
Which malacha is he concerned? I mean,
I'm not
what's
sure
gonna
which
be the-
malacha he's concerned about. Maybe the moving of the boat is the malacha. I don't know.
Can you?
Maybe there are certain. If he's talking about a non-Jew sailor, then certainly there are malachot that he's doing, tying the sails, whatever.
If you're embarking on Shabbos, according to the Rashbam,
Yeah.
even you could, because the Rashbam's beginning, like with the Sfina, that does not move, so there is no Isser of Tumen involved, and you arrive Motze Shabbos in another place, so you could basically, there would be basically no problem to embark on Shabbos in a ship and the Motze Shabbos be in Cyprus or something like this.
Yeah, the Rashbam permitted embarking on Shabbat, provided you're not telling the goy to leave. That's here in the continuation of Tosfot.
Aha.
You can even go into the boat on Shabbat, provided that you're not
So
telling
they
the
go on a
non-Jew.
cruise, then according to the Rashbam, and they pull up in Greece Saturday morning,
Right.
You can get off the boat, walk around, get back on the boat, and then as long as you
No, if you were, that's a different case. If you were at sea, okay, that's a different issue of Tchumen. If you were at sea when Shabbat entered and then you reach a port, then you haven't left any Tchum at all. But if you started out in one port when Shabbat was entered and then you got to another port, that might be a little different.
But why we then
No, but I'm saying you're on Shabbat, you're sailing
Yeah,
in the Mediterranean. Saturday morning you dock in Greece.
okay.
You get
The
off
question is
boat,
whether you're
walk
allowed to get
around.
off the boat.
But as you started in the sea when Shabbat started, is my point.
That could be true, but it doesn't have anything to do with the Rashbam. The Rashbam is just talking about the Isser of setting sail within 3 days to Shabbat. And he's saying that Isser is only...
Right?
Also, I mean, Tosfot discusses that also, but
Yeah.
definitely within 3 days to Shabbat, he says it's only according to Beit Shammai.
Yeah, but he saw this not because the Malam Yud Tvachtim or whatever. He saw this because the
Yeah, Tchumen he solved another way, not the solution of being above 10 Tfachim like
Yeah,
the
but
Rish.
according to the Rashba, you can also take a bus or a train or whatever. Even over land, this would work because the bus is, so to say, your closed entity, and you could even mount the bus on Shabbos and go out on Motzei Shabbos. You go off at the other place, according to the Rashba. If you take
Maybe, could
very
be.
literally.
Interesting, I don't know, maybe, it could be.
And what?
You go on Shabbos on a bus. in
Why isn't a
Oxford.
bus? Why isn't the bus Aser Mishum Tchumen?
No, because you just walk on this bus and the bus drives away with you.
But you still have your Isra of Tchumen.
No, but
you
according to
have
the
not,
Rashbam, the
because
Yisr of Tchumen doesn't apply because you're still and it's the boat
You
that's
are
moving.
in
So
the
he's
bus,
saying by the
that's
same
the
token,
option.
you're on the bus and the bus is moving.
But that's just physics. You're currently moving right now. You're also still. So according to the Rashbam,
But it's irrelevant according to the Rashbam. He says it's just for the sheep.
It's a good point. I don't know. Listen, according to the Rif, it's definitely not Shaykh, but maybe according to the Rashbam, it might be.
Yeah, it seems to be.
It might be. But this Rashbam is not an accepted opinion, but I just brought in.
So, but I can visit my Rebbe in London from Oxford.
No, I mean, that's the
Take a bus.
question.
It makes
Why shouldn't you be able to get on a train on Shabbat and go someplace outside to a different city?
Yeah.
The only problem would be Tchumen.
yeah.
Yeah, but the Tchumen problem comes just down according to the Rashbam.
So I'm
If
saying
you
Rabbeinu
leave the
Hananel,
bus
the
on
Rif,
the
everybody,
train-
they would all agree that there is an Isser of Tchumen in such a case. You're right that maybe according to the Rashbam, no.
If you could somehow swing it, that there was populated areas.
If
from
you're not
point
going
A-
outside the Tchum, then Tchumen is not a problem. You might have other issues, but Tchumen would not be a
So
problem.
traveling in an automobile then on Shabbat.
No, automobile is more problematic. What case of an automobile? You get into other issues, whether a goy is doing malacha for you or not.
So you have, let's say you have non-Jewish relatives that are going to visit someone on Shabbat, and they ask you to come along.
and it's all within the Tchum.
Yeah. They're going anyway.
No, you don't even need to get public transportation. The bus is going anyway, whether
Yeah.
you get on or off. So right, so as long as you're within the Tchum, Yikar, then there's no issue.
So they actually did this, I think, in London, New Year's Eve a few years ago. All the trains here are free.
Okay.
You don't need any money. So the JLE, which is Or Samach's satellite here,
Okay.
did a meal in town. Everybody got on the train from Hendon, rode the train to town, had the meal, and rode back
Yeah,
on Friday night.
yeah.
So
Okay.
there's no issue with that.
Mikar, then there's no issue. In the
So you
travel
make
itself,
sure
if
that
it's a
you
goy
do
that
the
does it,
rest
then you're not having any effect on it.
And
Mikar,
going
then-
anyway.
and they're going anyway, Mikar, then there's no issue, right? As long as you're within the
It's the
Tchum.
same idea as the Shabbat list.
You're right, with paying whatever, you're getting to other issues. Okay. Okay, the Tam. Okay. So it also disagrees with the Rashbam. Then it comes up with another opinion. Go to the underlying part. וטעם שאסור להיכנס בספינה, אומר יצבא משום דדמי לשט בנהר, ואסור גזירה שמא יעשה חבית של שייטין. הנם ישב להנהיג הספינה והביא כמוליכה 400 בכרמל. Okay, so he brings up the issue of the gzera of making an oar, or rowing the boat yourself, which he says is asr. So that's why you can't set sail within 3 days to Shabbat, because you might sail the ship yourself, or you might make some sort of raft for yourself or something like that.
Why is
Okay,
it also to sail the boat yourself?
because he says it's like you're moving it because the sea is a Carmelite.
Yeah.
And it's a hotzah in a Carmelite. We're going more than 4 hours, carrying something
The
more
sea
than.
is a Carmelite. The sea is a Makom Torah.
No, sea is not a Makom Torah. Sea is a Carmelite. Anyway, so why if I set sail with 3 days before? Why is that mutter?
So in an Erev, you'd be okay.
But for that time,
There's no
okay,
Erev
all
on
the
a
things
sea.
you want to make.
No, but Nagi, you have a huge lake in your house.
And then you would have the first reason that he raises. Shema yaseh chavit shel shayatim. Okay? So how does it help that it's 3 days before?
You can make it all.
What?
3 days enough to make it all.
Okay, it's not really clear here. The Ritva of the Mishnah Berurah says that it's like a heker. By the fact that we've required you to set sail more than 3 days before Shabbat, that is what will remind you that not to be Mechalel Shabbat. Okay, that's his sheet.
I would have said that's not fruit. You're already used to the boat by then.
So you might forget that it's Shabbat. You forgot about it already.
Yeah.
It could be. Okay, so we'll kvetch this opinion. Okay. Now let's see, we have 2 more opinions, the Balamor and the Ran, and then we'll work out what happens by cruise ships. Okay, the Balamor, this is a very important opinion because it has a lot of applications besides the sailing. So he brings the Gemara, he quotes the Rif, or on page 2, and then he brings up another opinion. ולי נראה טעם אחר, בין בזו בין במה שאמרו אין שרין על עריות של נוכרים, וכולו מקום סכנה הוא, וכל 3 ימים קודם לשבת, כמה ישבת המקרה, ונראה כמתחנה לדחות את השבת, מפני שאין דבר שעומד בפני פיקוח נפש. והוא הדין להפריש במדברות בכל מקום סכנה שאדם עתיד לחלל בו את השבת. In other words, he says as follows. When you go out to sea, you're entering a makom sakana. In other words, a place of danger. And you might have to be mechalel Shabbat. You'll tell me, what's the problem? If I'll be in danger, it's pikuach nefesh, it's doche Shabbat, right? But he says, by putting yourself in a situation that you know will create a situation that could create a situation of pikuach nefesh, which will override Shabbat, that itself is nir'eh kemachne lidchot et Shabbat. He says, it's as if you're putting yourself in a situation where you'll have to be mechanel Shabbat. That's wrong. And that's why they say not to do it within 3 days for Shabbat.
Why then 3 days? Then le'olam. Don't start smoking because you put yourself in a sakana.
Right. You'll have to smoke on Shabbat.
No, you'll have to go to the hospital if you're going to die.
Right. So he says, v'chol 3 yamim kodem l'Shabbat kamei Shabbat mikre. In other words, any time you're within,
okay. Yeah.
In other words,
We say Shabbat Shalom in 3 days.
What?
Shouldn't I say you can start saying
Well, I don't
Shabbat Shalom from
understand.
Wednesday?
Kamei Shabbat, what does that mean?
Yeah, there's a Gemara in Gittin that says that if I say give the get to my wife after Shabbat, then it's 3 days after Shabbat. And if you say give before Shabbat, then 3 days before Shabbat is considered before Shabbat. In other words, this idea also applies to Avdallah, that you can make Avdallah until 3 days after Shabbat.
Yeah, but
Okay, just to explain what he's saying. So what he's saying is as follows. Again, I'm on Shabbat, I'm not going to be Mechalel Shabbat, because if I have a Pikuach Nefesh, it'll be mutter, right?
Okay.
What's the whole Isser here? The whole Isser is, why are you doing something? Why are you now putting yourself in a situation that you will have to be Mechalel Shabbat? It's nir'eh, it's like Marit Ayin. It's nir'eh kemachne lidchot et Shabbat. So therefore, if Shabbat is close by, it's Wednesday already, or Thursday, according to some opinions, and now you're setting sail, so everybody looks at you and says, what are you doing? Shabbat is on its way, and you're putting yourself now in a situation where you might have to be Mechalel Shabbat. But if it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Shabbat is very far away. Nobody's buying yet stuff for Shabbos. Chatzkele is not yelling L'chavod Shabbos when he's carrying the potatoes. Nobody's. Maybe he's the only one, right? So nobody's thinking about Shabbat yet. So it's not like you're it's not nir'eh kemachne lidchot et Shabbat.
Back to our discussion from earlier today. Why in the world can I live in a place where I need a kitat konenut? Because at that point, I could have to be mechalel Shabbat in order to save someone's life.
Okay, so again, I would answer. This is what he's saying. The whole isser is if you're doing something special, 3 days within Shabbat, that it appears as if.
So you have to set your yeshuv from between Sunday and Tuesday.
In other words, for example, like Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says as follows: I'm a doctor, right? I know there's a good chance I'll be called on Shabbat to the hospital, and then I'll have to be mechalel Shabbat. Why don't I have to go near the hospital before Shabbat? So he says, because even according to the Baal Amar, the old Isser is to do something out of the ordinary, which will cause
A further Chilul
a
Shabbat.
further Chilul Shabbat. And then people will say, what are you doing? But if I'm going home, that's not something out of the ordinary that I'm doing to cause Chilul Shabbat. Every day I go home. I'm not required to prevent Chilul Shabbat from happening. So if I'm going home where I always go, even though I don't live that close to the hospital and I might end up having to drive to the hospital, that's not a problem.
But
If I live near the hospital and then Friday I decide to go away to somewhere else farther from the hospital where I know there's a good chance I'll be called in, that would be Asr according to the Baal Amar.
So,
But if I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary, that's fine.
but to set up an ordinary lechatchila situation whereby you might come to be mechalel Shabbat, that's permitted.
That's permitted, provided it's not. The only isser is if it's nir'eh kematneh b'tchot et Shabbat. In other words, under your regular status, you would not have to be, and now you're doing something specific within 3 days
Right,
to
but
Shabbat.
can you make your regular status one where you will have to mechalel Shabbat more than an ordinary individual?
Yeah, again, I mean, what happened? I mean,
Like a doctor, an ambulance driver, or a,
yeah. So what are you going to tell somebody? Don't learn to be a doctor because then you won't have to. You'll have to be Mechalel Shabbat. No, so start your medical studies on Sunday or Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, and then you're fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
but
You mentioned about giving a get, that you don't give a get after one's.
No. It's not that generally you can give a get. It's just if somebody said give the get after Shabbat, he made a specific time where he wanted the get to be given. The Gemara says, what is after Shabbat? After Shabbat is after Shabbat, well, within 3 days to Shabbat. It's only if somebody specifically limited the time that he wants the get to be given.
But I would say, with regards to giving a get, without being too cruel,
Right.
you know, if you're going to give one's wife a get, and it rather be before Shabbat, it would improve on next Shabbat.
Well, that depends. It depends. It depends on.
it depends on the wife.
I saw once
What about
after
her on Shabbat?
when I was doing
You
shimush
can't have everything, Sam.
in the Beit in Yerushalayim. I saw many gittin being given,
Yeah.
and most of it was very sad. But there was one case where they started jumping and laughing, and
Yeah,
where
you
everybody
mentioned
was
this.
clapping.
Yeah, you said this.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
No, what was it?
No, they were very happy. Yeah, they were all smiling and laughing and yelling kululu and whatever after the get was
Like a
given.
wedding.
Yes, that's what the Dain said to them. He said to them, "What is this, a chasana?"
What did they say?
They didn't explain what it was about, and he didn't inquire any further, and they were on to the next get.
But what is the case? Let's check another Baal case. What is if I have somebody's very sick in my unhealthy in my family,
Right.
somebody very ill in my family, and the doctor says there is a high chance for you that you might have to go on Shabbat.
There's a what?
A high
Okay,
chance, a
right.
chazaka almost, that you might have to go on Shabbat.
Right.
Are you then still allowed to stay at home, or do you?
No, that's what I
go
said from
before-
Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that he says that even according to the Baal Amar, I don't have to do something before Shabbat to prevent me from having to be Mechalel Shabbat. I am not allowed to cause myself to be Mechalel Shabbat, but
Yeah,
I don't have
that's
to
what
do
I'm
something in
asking.
act of prevention. So that's what he says. If the doctor is going home, he's not doing something out of the
No.
ordinary which
Well,
will cause
that's-
Chilul Shabbat. He doesn't have to, he's not required to prevent Chilul Shabbat.
No, it's a different question. We were told as parents by the doctor
Right?
that you might have to come with your kid on next Shabbat. If this
Okay.
stays like this. Now the question is, would
No, that's what I'm
can
saying.
we
You,
stay at home?
You can
or
stay at
do
home.
we have
You can
to
stay
go
at
to
home.
the
I'm saying the
hospital?
only problem would be, let's say you live right by the hospital,
Yeah.
and you know that Shabbat, there's a good chance you'll have to go to the hospital, and you decide before Shabbat to go away,
Oh,
far
What if-
away from the
What
hospital.
if it's for definite?
What?
What if it's definite?
What do you mean it's definite?
You're definitely gonna.
Even
have
if
to
it's
buy them.
definite, you're not required before Shabbat to prevent Chilul Shabbat from occurring. That's what he says, Rav Auerbach.
okay.
The only thing is, you're not allowed to cause lechatchila within 3 days before Shabbat. Even that, for a mitzvah, it's mutter. For example, there's an interesting tshuva of the Tzitz Eliezer. He says, he asks the question, are you allowed to have surgery within 3 days for Shabbat? Because there are certain surgeries that will require afterwards certain chilul Shabbat in the treating of the person.
Sure, yeah.
So he says it's considered, even though this seems to be, so you should say all surgeries would have to be with more than 3 days before Shabbat. But he says since a surgery is for somebody's health, it's considered a dvar mitzvah. Then you can have them even within Shabbat. He says otherwise it would be impossible if the hospitals would have to shut down for 3 days.
Yeah,
So
And there was a woman who had an operation and she couldn't reschedule the date, had to be on Shabbat, yeah?
okay.
And she made arrangements to stay in a hotel right close to the hospital. She didn't need to?
Just take a cab on Shabbat.
I mean, but the question is whether that was a type of surgery which we would say pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat for. If it was a scheduled surgery,
It was
yeah, so that's not real pikuach nefesh because
No, it could be a scheduled cancer surgery.
yeah, but you can't have it on Sunday.
There's
no, she couldn't reschedule the surgery.
Yeah, but that's a technical problem. That's a bureaucratic
It
problem.
could be the nafka mina is between now
When we
and
say
the next
pikuach
one.
nefesh,
No,
what?
the
That could
surgeon
result
only
in a
doing
pikuach
this
nefesh.
surgery on this day. I mean, whatever the reason. I mean, it wasn't in her reshut.
That's a problem because that's not so clear. That's considered pikuach nefesh doche. We usually just say pikuach nefesh doche Shabbat. Usually, we mean if you don't do this now, you will die. Okay.
Yeah, if she doesn't
Here,
have
you can have the
surgery.
surgery on Sunday. You can have it on Friday.
So,
For
but-
some bureaucratic mess, you have to have it on Shabbat.
But, yes, but
So
exactly.
therefore she had to stay near the hospital.
It's logical to say in such a situation because
Or maybe
that's
she wouldn't
because
be able
that's
to
not
have
so.
the surgery.
Yeah, but why get into that cold question if you can solve it by staying near the hospital?
No, I'm saying why can you have surgery on Shabbat? Bichlal, if it's not, if what you're saying is
Well,
if it's not dochet Shabbat anymore,
I assume it was a non-Jewish doctor, right?
so it's your Jewish body.
Okay, but if it's a non-Jewish doctor, then it's only an isser of Amir al-Nochri, so maybe they decide in such a situation that the Amir al-Nochri is mutter.
But that's the aim, does it?
In Israel, you don't have that. You don't have scheduled surgeries on Shabbat.
Whatever the
What?
surgeon does. She's karka olam. Whatever the surgeon does, he does. Nothing to do with her. She's asleep. Like karka olam.
Yeah, but she hired him to
Beforehand.
perform the surgery.
No, it's not so
What?
clear. It's like the guy who doesn't stop his ship on Shabbos. What can you do?
Okay, but, anyway, the whole issue there is Amir al-Nochri. He just asked why they told her to go near the hospital before Shabbat. So I'm offering a possibility.
Okay.
Okay, let's see the last sheet and then we'll try to calculate very quickly what happens regarding cruise ships. This is the sheet of the Ramban. I just brought it from the Ran. Why did I bring it from the Ran?
Because it's the clearest.
Oh,
Yeah. Especially if you're slightly chicken
Or seasick.
or seasick.
I see. I just wanted to make sure you're picking up also on the non-important details that I throw in
Extra points
in these
to be
few.
earned, but,
If you can quote the stories or all the
you
other.
said, because somebody would learn it because it was like the clearest vision. Well, Moshe, you're Moshe,
שיחת
right?
חולין
It was
של
Moshe.
תלמידי חכמים. שיחת חולין
Right,
של
very
תלמידי
good.
חכמים,
Very-
שיחת לימוד.
Very good. All right. Where is now? He quotes the Ramban here. All right. Look at 4 lines in the third page, number 3. 4 lines from the bottom. It says "Valderech zeitira Ramban zal."
From the bottom of your underline.
Yeah. "Valderech zeitira Ramban zal מפרשי ימים." People setting off the seal. שייכנסו בים בשבת ולפרוש מן הנמל ואין חוששים. משום כשאסרו להפליג בספינה תוך 3 ימים, לא אמרו לה בישראל סוחר כל הספינה, שכל המלאכה נעשית בעינה נעשית אלא בשבילו. אבל לספינה שרובה נוכרים וישראלים מועטים נכנסים בה, כיוון דרובה נוכרים על שן הנוכרי נעשית, כדאמרינן פרק כל כבדי במסיבה שרובה נוכרים והדליק את הנוכרי את הנר שמותר לישראלים שבא להשתמש בו. So according to the Ramban, the whole issue of setting sail within 3 days to Shabbat is talking about a case where it's a boat.
for him.
What? Where the non-Jew is doing sailing the boat for him. And even that, if it's, because why? Because if it's within 3 days to Shabbat, it appears as if you hired him to set sail dafka on Shabbat. But if it's farther away from Shabbat, it doesn't appear as if you told him specifically to set sail for Shabbat. In other words, according to the Ramban, if I'm the one that hired the boat, for sure I cannot tell him to sail on Shabbat, okay? Because that's a classical case of Amir al-Nachri, telling him to do Melach on Shabbat. I can tell him, set sail, and I'll ask him, please stop on Shabbat, and he probably won't. But even that I'm not allowed to do unless it's for a Dvar Mitzvah within 3 days for Shabbat, because again it appears as if I ordered him to sail on Shabbat. From farther away from Shabbat, it doesn't appear if I ordered him to sail on Shabbat. But what's the nafkamina? That if most of the passengers are not Jewish, okay, then we say the goy, when there's a group of Jews and a group of non-Jews, who is he doing it for? He's doing it for the larger group. So if the majority of people on the boat are not Jewish, no problem at all. You can set sail even before Shabbat, close to Shabbat, even for a Dvar shoot. Okay? That's the Shita and Ramban. Now let's make a quick calculation. What do we have by cruise ships? So let's see by cruise ships. First problem is, according to Rabbeinu Hananel, we have a problem of Tchumen if I'm below 10 Fachim to the seabed.
No issue.
I highly doubt that's a problem by cruise ships, unless the captain gets drunk and decides to ram the cruise ship into the rocks, like the guy in Italy. Right. But generally that should not be a problem, so according to him we don't have a problem at all. According to the Rif, problem with Oneg Shabbos, first 3 days. That apparently there's no concern at all on the cruise ships because they're so calm and sturdy. I mean, nobody would set sail on a cruise ship for 7 days if he thought the first 3 days he would be sick. Okay, so according to the Rif, also Rif and the Rambam, definitely not a problem. According to the Rashbam, we said the issue is the whole halacha is only according to Beit Shammai, so for sure that's not a problem. Then we had the Ritzbah. According to the Ritzbah, there's a gzera of making an oar, or you might come to be manning the sfina. So according to the Ritzbah, it seems that it would be problematic.
Why?
To set.
Well,
It's a gzera. It's a far-fetched gzera by a cruise ship. What's the likelihood? But again, you know, there've been if you'll have to jump ship or whatever.
Titanic.
Yeah, like the Titanic.
No, but that's already second out chayin.
Okay, right. So according to the Ritzbah, there's a gzera, so it's hard to say that it's motor,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
According to the Balamar, in all likelihood, you're not going to have to be mechalel Shabbat on the cruise ship. There's enough goyish crew there to handle it. And
is this what you would also? Could you refer to this as Bittul Barabin?
what?
Could you refer to this as Bittul Barabin? You know, Bittul Barab. You've got more non-Jews than there are Jews.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Bittul B'Shishim.
Yeah. So and according to the Ramban, also, if it's a majority of people sailing on the boat are not Jewish, also not a problem. Now, where would this be a problem? So therefore, really. Right, so there are certain cruises that come from Israel which are Madarji Jews, and there is a problem because there's even bigger problem. Because there, if it's a Jew running the group, he's not allowed to instruct the boat to sail specifically on Shabbat. We said the basic condition is that you're not telling the goy to set sail on Shabbat.
Right.
You're even asking him not to.
Well,
So that would be problem.
asking him not to.
So what happens with these?
Yeah, but you can't be telling him yes too. In some of these groups, they're telling him it's run by Jews, and they're telling him to specifically sail on Shabbat.
They're not saying don't.
No, they're
Shabbat.
specifically saying on Shabbat go to this place. So that is problematic.
How do these kosher cruises work?
No, so I'm saying it depends what kind of. If it's a cruise which is only Jews, then it is a problem. But most of these cruises are majority non-Jews, and they have a smaller group within the cruise. So according to those, you're even allowed to set sail, even if it's for pleasure, with the exception of the seat of the Ritzbah. But according to all the Rishonim, there's no problem in setting sail even on Friday. Okay? According to all the opinions, because majority non-Jews, you're not going to have to be Mechalel Shabbat for Pikuach Nefesh. You're not going to have a problem of Oneg Shabbat. You're above 10 Tfachim in the seat, so there's no problem with Tchumen.
What about on Shabbat?
On Shabbat, there's a whole discussion that it's not so practical because the way you have to do it, you have to be Konesh Shvita on the ship. In other words, you have to make Kiddush on the ship on Friday night, get off, and come back on. It's not so practical on the
Can
cruise
you get
ship.
off a ship on Shabbat?
You can. Here at the end, I brought you a tshuva which has all those details, so you can read that. We didn't have time to get into that. That's a different issue.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what is the case of, see, the Rashbam called it Tchum, the ship.
What?
But you have a fairly big ship. He called it a Tchum, yeah? the sheep.
Yeah.
What is the status of the sheep? With regard to my makom shvita, I am allowed to.
Yes,
carry on
within the
entire ship, or
you're allowed to walk within the entire ship. There is a
what
question.
it carrying?
There is an issue of erev chatzeros. That's here I brought in the tshuva, the whole discussion
Ah.
on having to make an erev chatzerot on the ship. When there are cases that you have to, there are cases that you don't.
If it's like a hotel, you wouldn't have to, would you?
Hotel is the same problem. According to many opinions, you do have to make an erev chatzerot in the hotel.
Really?
Yeah,
That's the big issue, hotel.
Really? I heard you didn't have to. You didn't.
I mean, look, if it's a hotel within a city,
Yeah.
and there's an erev.
No Arab in the city.
Oh, if there's no erev, so then you get it's the same discussion like here. But by a hotel, it depends if everybody's a guest, if everybody's eating, all the Jews are eating in one place. Look here at the end, we brought here all the different scenarios.
I bet if there weren't any other Jews, and you didn't have to. You didn't have to.
If what?
There aren't any other Jews.
If you're the only Jew, there's no problem. But if there are more than one Jew,
So, for example, you go away for Pesach, like we did last year. We went to go for Pesach to Venice, we weren't in Venice itself. The whole hotel was taken over by Yidden. Did we have to make Erev Chatzerot, or would that be made for us?
were you all eating in one dining room?
Yes.
Okay, so then it's not negative. But if you're eating in different dining rooms, that would be a problem. If all the Jews are eating in the same place, there no erev chatzerot is required.
What if all the Jews eat in different places? But everyone's a guest. Nobody owns their room.
Yeah, but a guest only works if there's a balabait which you're tafel to. So if, let's say, there's a Jewish owner who lives there,
Yeah.
he's
If I
there
go away
permanently.
to a Goyish hotel, and there might be other Jews in the hotel with me, there might not be. Right?
And you're not eating in the same place,
No.
then the chatchila you should do a neighbor of chatzeros plus chiras rishus from the goy.
Because we went away, I remember we went away for Shabbat, I called the Rav, and the Rav said, no.
There is a shita here. I would not lechatchila rely on it. There is a shita of the Maharsham who says that since the balabait can move you from room to room,
Yeah.
even though he can't completely kick you out of the hotel, it's not considered a makom kavua.
You can also kick you out of the hotel if you want to.
No, how can you kick you out?
When you sign the contract, it says that the owners can remove you for any reason from the room no matter what. It says that on the contract.
No, remove from the room, not remove from the
No,
hotel.
remove you from the hotel. They can cancel your stay for any reason.
How is that possible?
Because let's say that you're being rowdy or something, they don't.
That's different.
No. For
They
any
have-
reason
they
or for...
retain- they
If
retain
I
control.
behave properly, I'm minding my own business, not bothering anybody. He's allowed to kick me out of the hotel after I rented a room?
I don't think so. You have to give him
That
just
sounds
cause.
insane.
I think he.
You'd have to give him just cause to kick you out. If you light a bonfire in your room, you can understand why they throw you out.
No, why? But if it's Lag Bomer,
Yeah, you light a bonfire
that's
in your
legitimate
room.
cause.
He's infringing on my religious rights.
Exactly.